Greetings, fellow humans. I am Hugh.
And I am Man.
And together we are definitely not
Two
kobolds in a trench coat. We enjoy human activities, such as paying taxes,
having existential crises,
and RPG horror stories. Let's see what we've got today.
Today, we have a player who got nerfed for above average rolls, a DM who made their player choose between D&D and their terminally ill parent, and a DM who had to teach their Murderhobo Nephew a lesson.
Rolled good for one session, now I'm nerfed. By Reddit user, GoodRaspberry5557. Playing a homebrew game and my DM let our party do a no limit point buy. Still a set number of points, but no cap to what to put the stat at. So if you want a +5 you can have it, but you'll have multiple negatives in other stats. On our first session, I rolled stupidly well for the few rolls we did that night. Probably averaged 17 on my rolls. And although other people also did stat dumps, the DM decided my character needed to be nerfed. I'm playing a rogue with a monster type race, so he implemented a hunger mechanic, so if I don't feed off of living people every day, I get disadvantage on every check and save that has to do with dex. Which goes without saying, as a rogue makes me completely useless. Eventually had to barter with the DM to at least let me keep my stealth for flat rolls so I could sneak away to get rid of the hunger, at the cost of whenever I'm afflicted, he gets to roll an extra damage die whenever I get hit. There's also a system where we're being watched by otherworldly beings, so if we do evil acts, like, feeding on people, the beings will punish us for not being the good heroes they want us to be. This system of being punished for not being good was also implemented after our first session and was never brought up when we were making our characters. So another player and myself, who made slightly evil aligned characters, are basically getting nerfed because the DM suddenly didn't like it after being very encouraging of our choices when making characters. I love my character and I want to continue playing him, but to say the least, I am slightly annoyed.
Yeah, that's putting it mildly. I would be pissed.
That's an extremely harsh handicap system, and then to implement it after session 1, after you started playing, when you've selected your characters, is not fair. The DM has definitely overstepped a boundary there.
And yeah, that's a very large reaction for after one session. I get it if in session 1 it's clear that this character is OP, and so you sort of make a few tweaks just to make them more normal. The tweaks that have been made in this case aren't just helping to make them a little bit more equal with the rest of the party. They're legit handicapping this character so that it's almost unplayable.
I think the DM should have given it more than one session before implementing any kind of changes, just to make sure it wasn't fluke of the dice roll. Very heavy-handed to come down on them after one session.
To have this rule that, you have to go feed on creatures, on living beings or whatever, but then also you've got these gods watching you, and so you're going to get punished for that, is just a no-win situation, not to mention that they even got to sneak away at the cost of getting extra damage. What?
Sometimes things like this can work. I once had a warlock character. I negotiated with the DM to have the requirement that I must make a human sacrifice to my patron once a month in order to maintain my powers. However, this was negotiated beforehand, and was also once a month I had to kill someone, not every day. That is a fair balance.
Yeah, that's how you negotiate with players and DMs, is you come up with something that is doable and sustainable, but still makes your character playable. DM tried to make me choose between D&D and a terminally ill parent, by Reddit user Throwaway. I know this is a dramatic title, but it's the TLDR. Gonna need a vibe check. I also suck in this one. And for the skeptics that think that this is a fake story, I'm happy to confirm with the mods that it really happened. There's slightly more to the story, but I'm trying to leave some of the more identifying details out to keep things vague for anonymity's sake, New to Reddit, sorry for any mistakes. So a while back, I was in a D&D group with some work buddies. Me, my best friend, and the best friend's partner, who was the DM, along with another very close friends, are the only ones really relevant in this story. We'd all been playing D&D together for a few years after I'd introduced best friend and partner to the hobby, with the close friend being the initial DM. Eventually, they got burned out due to IRL problems, including death in the family, and needed a break from DMing. Enter partner, who wanted to try DMing for the first time. That was fun. The campaign was going well, and jokes were established. Close friend and DM established an agreement that DM could try DMing for the while, but close friend would like to return to the DM's chair one day. Then one of my parents was diagnosed with terminal cancer. As the cancer progressed, I ended up needing to skip sessions to stay with my parents to help look after the family, as you do. Everyone at the table knew what I was going through. However, I admittedly wasn't the best at informing whether or not I'd be able to make it to session, sometimes not knowing that I was needed back at home and having to back out of D&D the night before. This frustrated the DM more than I realized. In other groups, everyone was more than understanding of my circumstances, so I assumed that this group wasn't any different. I was wrong. Things started to go bad when Close Friend had recovered from burnout and wanted to resume DMing. DM said no. Close Friend tried to offer the usual compromises, alternating weeks or months of who was DM until the campaign was done. Still no. The DM said that once we'd finished this module, they wanted to do a full campaign. It was clear that the DM didn't want to get out of the chair now. On the sidelines, me and best friend agreed that the whole fight was kinda dumb. The people in my other group, who had 2 regular DMs that took turns running games, agreed that it was dumb.
This DM really needs to chill out over holding onto the DM's chair for a bit. I know they want to finish the module, and that's reasonable. I think it would be the best solution to allow them to finish the module before then going to some kind of alternating weeks or any kind of alternation. But to viciously cling onto it, like trying to save a cat from a tree that doesn't want to be picked up, they really need to learn how to share.
Them wanting to finish that module is completely reasonable. But then saying, and then after that, we're starting a new campaign. Yeah, you're holding on just a little bit too tight. That needs to be a discussion if you have somebody else who enjoys DMing in the group. Next thing I knew, DM had private messaged me suggesting that I could go ahead and leave this group as I had missed so many sessions to play in another group, which wasn't what was going on at all. I re-explained to the DM that the other group wasn't why I was missing sessions and that I was sorry for missing so many in the last few months, but, terminally ill parent. The previous week, I needed to back out of the planned session due to said terminally ill parent needing an emergency hospital visit, which I'd explained immediately. DM had canceled that session due to 2 out of the 6 players not being able to make it, with the idea of a social contract coming into effect, which sounded almost like a threat. I'd never even heard of a social contract before this stuff. Close Friend was anxious about how DM was suddenly treating him. I was upset and getting mad because no matter how much I tried to get across that I'm sorry for not being able to play the game that I'm usually adored, and that it was solely due to needing to care for a very, very sick family member, and that I was worried about how controlling the DM was suddenly getting. At that point in my life, I simply had higher priorities than D&D, and it felt like I was being punished for it. And it was frustrating that the DM seemed so focused on the other group being the problem, not my family troubles.
Okay, I've never even met this DM, but I already have a very personal grudge against them. As someone who has had a terminally ill parent and watched them slowly decay, I am very frustrated with this DM's lack of empathy and the way they've completely latched on to the notion that they are skipping their game for another game, rather than this #1 priority family matter.
Yeah, it's really bizarre to me that the DM is like, oh, well, it's because of the other group. When it's like, no, I've literally told you so many times it's because I have a parent who's dying. I just don't understand that kind of reasoning. It's like, are they just looking for a reason to get rid of this person because they want to have another person? Or what's going on here?
This either sounds like A, DM on a power trip, or B, this was the partner of OP's best friend, so maybe they're jealous of them in some capacity.
Or maybe they caught wind of the second group and then just decided that that was the problem and then figured that, oh, you're just making excuses and using your dying parent so you can go play another game, I guess?
That is true. Some people will just latch onto something as the problem and not let go, no matter what you tell them.
DM doubled down, stating that for the next campaign, they'd be making players stick to the schedule, and that if players couldn't make it due to wanting to be in other groups instead, they didn't want them at the table because there were others willing and able to play. DM wanted the players there, ready and prepared. They were frustrated with me, and despite acknowledging my situation, seemed hyper-focused on the idea that I was playing in a different table, rather than waking up throughout the night to clean up the mess from a misaligned catheter tube spilling everywhere, and watching someone I loved dearly become frail, sickly, and a shell of their former selves. I was speaking, DM wasn't listening. They'd already made up their mind. I was in no mood for BS or further arguing that felt like I was being accused of cheating in a relationship. I wasn't going to be forced into making a choice between either group when I knew full well that that's not how D&D works. I've been able to play in multiple different campaigns and homebrew with multiple different groups without any problem aside from the occasional schedule. I made it clear that there were more important things to me than rolling dice at a table right now. I did not appreciate being pushed to make a choice about which game I would play in or be lectured about the DM's expectations going forward. If there were other people waiting to play, then that's great, but I wouldn't be one of them. Due to working with Best Friend, who is DM's partner, the resulting silent treatment from them and another work buddy, who as far as I know still plays with them, was not what I needed. I never went to another session of that DM's game. Close friend also left the game. I no longer speak to DM or former best friend, which sucks because I still work with former best friend, and over a year since this falling out, we barely speak. Not sure if we'll ever recover our friendship we had. It hurts too much. I know my trust is gone. I don't think I want someone in my life who treats me so coldly when they know what I'm going through. My dying parent passed away over a year ago, perhaps 3 months after the argument, peacefully and surrounded by family. Close friend has started a new prequel campaign to the old one, with some returning and some new players, with the plan of either going back to the old characters or continuing with the new ones once the timeline catches up. DM made that social contract with his new group, and most of the rules are standard, reasonable requests. There weren't 44 of them before anyone asks. I refuse to be told what to do regarding my hobbies and/or spending precious time with loved ones. It hurts losing friends so abruptly over something as stupid as a D&D game, but it wasn't really about D&D. I know I could have done better about communicating. We all could have. I regret some of the things that I said to DM while I was so mad and upset. I could have been better about the session attendance and making sure that I was prepared to play when it was time to attend. But I don't know. I'm venting this here to try and get it off my mind once and for all. If this story or any of the details within sound oddly familiar to any particular readers, no they don't. Or hey, chime in with your version of events. I'd love to hear them after a year of radio silence.
Okay, OP, I don't really know where you think you have blame here. I'm guessing we didn't hear about any kind of confrontation between you and DM and your former best friends, so we don't really know what's said. But you were in an extremely emotionally vulnerable position where you needed their support unconditionally. This is where I start to think maybe their partner had a problem with you and your friendship with them, and decided to use it as an excuse to drive a wedge between you. I don't think you deserve any blame here. You needed them, and they failed you.
You communicated the best that you could in the situation. I don't know what you said to DM, but again, nobody's perfect. Maybe you said a few things that you wish you could take back. I don't know, but don't blame yourself so much for this. This is on DM for being a person who has little to no empathy for your situation and wants to displace blame so that, I don't know, they feel less bad about being not nice to you.
Yeah, no doubt in my mind that there was something else going on here, whether that's something we've mentioned, or the fact that your former best friend's partner was nuts.
I mean, there's always that.
Was a closeted Karen. I don't think you should be contracted into playing a game when you're trying to take care of your sick parents. I arrested my nephew's character and put him in jail. By Reddit user, Tuku Fox. TLDR, nephew's character tries to burn down someone's house, so I had the town guard arrest him and put him in jail. So I've been running games for some kids lately. One of them is my nephew, and I'll be honest, he kinda sucks. He's not very attentive when building characters and says, "I don't care," a lot, but also specifically rejects a lot of ideas. Like I wanted to give him a simple barbarian character, but he said no and wanted an artificer. and then gives the characters extremely unserious names like Wendy's Chicken Sandwich, etc. The last bit is fine, even charming, in a vacuum. Then, in-game, is greedy for the spotlight but often isn't talking about the game. Then he does a lot of, I punch him, wait, no, actually, no, which would be again, fine once in a session. Then he's always on about magical items that he has from other campaigns. The worst being the Wand of Ridiculousness, which did a big load of damage. It's a whole thing. My instinct is to chalk it up to him being very young. But, time before last, he wasn't even the youngest there, and the others were all model players. A little shy here, a little uninformed there, but mostly compliant, patient and engaged. Anyway, the last game we only had one other kid there playing, a cleric. I didn't want either of them to have come for nothing, so I do a typical monsters attack the town, with the idea being the monsters attack civilians until targeted. That all goes fine. He and the cleric take out all the kobolds. I throw in a friendly minotaur barbarian to help them. Then, after the fight, he wants to go around and shoot all the civilians, making death saves to put them out of their misery. The other guy, a cleric, got to them first with Spare the Dying though. Then he says, I set one of the buildings on fire, and rolled a nat 20 on firebolts. Friendly Minotaur and the cleric step in and beat him into the ground. Barbarians are super strong at level 1, and he was out of spell slots, so it wasn't even close. I was stuck between making sure something happened and not picking on my nephew here. I decided to let him surrender, but also not to just let him get away. Nephew in character tries to talk his way out of it, with -1 charisma, and fails. Cleric testifies against him to the town guard and rolls a nat 20. Out of character, Nephew is talking about how he wants to burn them all, and blow up the whole town, and some other slightly unsettling threats. Called the cleric teacher's pet for talking to the guard. Guards haul him off to jail, but not before he manages to pickpocket the Minotaur with his astonishingly good sleight of hand and stealth, which is one of the things he actually cared about on his character. All his gold, stolen and otherwise, is seized as part of his fine, and his guy goes to jail. The end. Give me a sanity check on this. I think I did the right thing and everyone left mostly content, but I'm stuck between I should have just had the Minotaur and cleric beat him into the floor, and maybe I was too harsh.
I do wonder how old your nephew was in this story. Something tells me he's like in middle school, because this very feels like a edgy middle schooler sort of thing.
Sounds on the low end of teens. Maybe somewhere between 12 and 14. Maybe 15.
First of all, no, you didn't go over the top. I think that was actually a very good move on your part, OP. That was very wise. He had consequences. They weren't overly punishing. You didn't nuke the character. You just gave him consequences for his murder hobo ways.
Sounds like you were very even-handed.
That's honestly extremely even-handed. And hopefully the guy learns his lesson and doesn't grow up to be an adult edgy murder hobo.
Your even-handed discipline here may actually help him from doing worse things in real life. Yeah, I think you handled that quite perfectly, OP.
Honestly, this is like masterclass in how to handle a murder hobo who's just starting out as a murder hobo. Hey Hugh.
Yes, man.
A woman comes home to find her husband in bed with a female halfling. She screams at him, "You said you wouldn't cheat on me anymore!" He replies, "I know. Can't you see I'm trying to cut down?"
And with that, we have definitely not been two kobolds in a trench coat. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and make the necessary sacrifices to Tiamat. We'll see you next time.